केही मान्छे पढेर के गर्छ कोहीले जान्यो अहिले सानैहरूले नै सबैले म जस्तै गरी स्कुल नपठाएर म जस्तै अब हुन्छ नि बाहिरको ब्याकग्राउन्ड जस्तो छ उनीहरू नन एजुकेटेड भएपछि आफू जस्तो चाहिँ उस्तै बनाउनु
मलेको चाहिँ 15 वर्षको मलाई पाइसकेको है म 7 वर्ष हुँदाखेरि खस्नु भयो जब बुवा खस्नु भयो त्यहाँबाट धेरै एकदम पीडा हुने सिङ्गो बगाएर कतिसम्म दुःख हुन्छ
Okay, that would be great. Okay, you come here, then we'll go together from here. Okay. A lot of women come from different suffering and the background. A lot of women mention that since they get inside the gate of 7 Women and they feel very peaceful. I feel the same.
7 Women began 12 years ago when I met 7 disabled women in the back streets of Kathmandu who were operating out of a tin shed. These women were heavily stigmatised by their community because of their physical appearance.
अब आफू एक त डिसेबल हो अब यहाँ भनेको जस्तो भने अब डिसेबल र एबलमा त धेरै फरक छ होइन अब मैले यहाँ नपाएको भए त म मेरो अलिकति उतै आर्थिक स्तरले अलिक कमै हुँदै हुन्थ्यो होला
People need to be empowered through being educated and have their basic needs covered.
So our main 3 program is focusing on skill training, employment opportunity, and education.
अनि जब अनि सिरिङमा जब अनिता म्याम आउनुभयो उहाँले मलाई अपर्च्युनिटी दिनुभयो अब अपर्च्युनिटी तिमी लिटरेसी टिचर बन्न चाहन्छौ भनेर त्यस अनि मैले चाहिँ हुन्छ किन नभन्ने
It gives a lot of confidence in women when they start to become self-sustainable so they don't have to depend on their husband or family to survive.
अहिले मैले यसरी अहिले यो सेलुन आएर अनि गाउँमा गएर हेल्प गर्नु परेपछि मात्र अहिले उदाहरण बन्यो अनि अहिले छोरीछोरीलाई पनि पढ्नु परेको छ
This is what empowers them, uplifts them, makes them leaders in their community. Women are inclusive. Once they learn, earn, they want to share those skills with other women, and that's why we've seen such an amazing ripple effect.
म त जस्तो होइन अलिकति छु होइन आफू जस्तै मान्छेहरूलाई ल्याएर अब उहाँले पढ्नु भएको छैन आफू जस्तै आफूलाई रेस्पेक्ट गर्छ नि त टिचर भनेर कति रेस्पेक्ट गर्छ कति खुसी लाग्छ कि त्यति नै गर्दो लाग्छ त्यस्तो गर्छु जस्तो सोचेको पनि थिएन
My name is Hannah Warren. I'm the founder of Julay and a former Rotary ambassadorial scholar to India. Maheshwar is an ancient village on the edge of the Narmada River in the state of Madhya Pradesh. Weaving is a local tradition, and today there are over 4,000 weavers living there. I first went to Maheshwar in order to pursue a photography project that would document female weavers wearing saris that they'd woven themselves. And I was really surprised when I got there to realize that these women couldn't even afford to own a single sari that they had woven themselves. They had this incredible talent and skill, and yet they couldn't actually afford to own a sari. That really inspired me to start a project that would empower these women to become financially independent and to rise above the middlemen who exploit them. So I decided to create Julay, which is a nonprofit social enterprise that concentrates on investing in women so that they can create a brighter future for themselves, their families, and their communities. Rotary really helped us to expand the scope of what we're doing. Now, just 2 years down the line, we're working with over 100 women. Ultimately, our goal is to work with over 1,000 women because we believe that investing in women can create sustainable and measurable impacts in this community that will help to end child labor and ultimately alleviate the cycle of chronic poverty.
अब केही मान्छे पढेर के गर्छ कोहीले जान्यो त्यस्तो अहिले सानो सानोहरूले नै सबैलाई म जस्तै गरी स्कुल नपठाएर म जस्तै अब हुन्छ नि बाहिर बाहिरको ब्याकग्राउन्ड जस्तो छ उनीहरू नन एजुकेटेड भएपछि आफू जस्तो चाहिँ उस्तै बनाउनु
मौनीको चाहिँ 15 वर्षको मलाई पाइसकेको है म 7 वर्ष हुँदै फेरि खस्नु भयो जब बुवा खस्नु भयो त्यहाँबाट धेरै एकदम अब पीडा हुने सिङ्गो बगाएर कति समय दुःख हुन्छ
Okay, that would be great. Okay, you come here, then we'll go together from here. Okay. A lot of women come from different suffering and the background. A lot of women mention that since they get inside the gate of 7 Women and they feel very peaceful. I feel the same.
7 Women began 12 years ago when I met 7 disabled women in the back streets of Kathmandu who were operating out of a tin shed. These women were heavily stigmatised by their community because of their physical appearance.
यस्तो अब आफू एक त डिसेबल हो अब यहाँ भनेको जस्तो भने अब डिसेबल र एबलमा त धेरै फरक छ होइन अब मैले यहाँ नपाएको भए त म मेरो अलिकति उ चाहिँ आर्थिक स्तरले अलिक कमै हुँदै हुन्थ्यो होला
People need to be empowered through being educated and have their basic needs covered.
So our main 3 program is focusing on skill training, employment opportunity, and education.
अनि जब अनि सिरिगममा जब अनिता म्याम आउनुभयो उहाँले मलाई अपर्च्युनिटी दिनुभयो अब अपर्च्युनिटी तिमी लिटरेसी टिचर गर्न चाहन्छौ भनेर त्यस अनि मैले चाहिँ हुन्छ किन नभन्ने
It gives a lot of confidence in women when they start to become self-sustainable so they don't have to depend on their husband or family to survive.
मलाई सबैलाई अहिले मैले यसरी अहिले यो सेलुन आएर अनि गाउँमा गएर हेल्प गर्नु परेछ मात्रै अहिले उदाहरण बन्यो अनि अहिले छोरीछोरीलाई पनि पढ्नु पर्छ
This is what empowers them, uplifts them, makes them leaders in their community. Women are inclusive. Once they learn, earn, they want to share those skills with other women, and that's why we've seen such an amazing ripple effect.
म त जसरी अलिकति छु होइन आफू जस्तै मान्छेहरूलाई ल्याएर अब उहाँले पढ्नु भएको छैन आफू जस्तै आफूलाई रेस्पेक्ट गर्छ नि त टिचर भनेर कति रेस्पेक्ट गर्छ कति खुसी लाग्छ कि त्यति नै गर्दा लाग्छ त्यस्तो गर्छु जस्तो सोचेको पनि थिएन
Hello, this is Dave Robinette. I am going to really mess people up because I don't know how many clubs are actually counting down 29, 28, 27, and I don't care. This is the last day of our 5-day district conference. I have said this 4 days in a row, so I'm going to say it one more time. Please keep your screens, your microphones muted so that we don't hear any background noise that's going on at either at your office or club meeting, wherever it might be. Best results, please view this on full screen. In answer to questions that have been posted, these will all be uploaded. They are massive files. It will take a while to upload. So please give me time to do that. And once they are uploaded, we will send a link out to each day's meeting as to where you can find it and so on. We're still trying to figure out if Dropbox or something else might be the best approach. Without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our illustrious and very well, he's done a fantastic job. I'm tripping over the words because I'm just plain tired at this point. Mike Elam, it is yours, and I'm going to shut up.
Thank you, Dave Robinette. Yay! Hey, guys, welcome to day 5 of our 5-day virtual district conference for District 6060. As Dave said, my name is Mike Elam. And, my home club, by the way, is the St. Charles Sunrise Club. I used to be part of the Noonday Club, which is an awesome club. My schedule changed, so the Sunrise guys were nice enough to have me. But it has been an honor this week to serve as the district conference MC. On Monday, we thought maybe we were technically challenged on some things that didn't exactly run the way we wanted them to. Until I happened to see the Earth Day conference that was going on with world leaders. Dude, we rocked this. We had no technical issues at all compared to the fact of trying to tell world leaders, President Putin, it's your turn to talk. So we rocked this. Dave, well done. I want to tell you a little bit, like Dave said, all this conference, all of this is going to be uploaded. Eventually, we'll figure out where and how, but we will let you know about all that. But I just wanted to kind of tell you, if this is your first day, what have you missed? You've missed a lot, obviously 4 days worth. On Monday, we heard from our district governor, Tom Drennan. Tuesday, we met our district governor-elect, Margie Sammons, who's counting down to July 1st when she can take over, or at least Tom's counting down to July 1st when she can take over. We enjoyed the Parade of Presidents, which I still love that line, Sue Cobb. It's all the Rotary leaders who are going to serve as our club presidents starting on July 1st. On Wednesday, we heard from our ambassadorial scholar, Hannah Rowald, and from a former group study exchange team member, Katie Renkin. Yesterday, we were honored to hear from the General Secretary and Chief Executive Officer of Rotary International, John Huco. Also yesterday, we honored those Rotarians who have passed away in the past 18 months. I got to tell you, man, that was tough to come back from after watching that. That was a wonderful tribute, and we are going to miss all of them. Every day, we have highlighted community service activities throughout our district clubs and showcased those club projects in the video. One of the club projects that one of your club projects has probably been included in that. And again, every day's session has been recorded, so you're going to be able to watch this eventually down the road. Now, if you are a Rotarian who is attending your very first District 6060 conference, welcome. We hope this has been a great experience for you. Hope you've learned a lot about Rotary. Hope you appreciate all the different things that is going on all throughout District 6060 and what all the clubs are doing. Hopefully, you've got some great ideas that you can use in your area, and your club can start doing those. We've had people who have met with us from all over the place. I keep claiming we are an international district conference because we had people from Canada tune in. We had somebody on vacation. I don't know where she was. Jeannie was her name. She was on a beach with grass huts. So I know that was not along the Mississippi River. That body of water looked completely different because it was blue, not brown. So we've had people from all over the place. Thank you to all of our clubs who have made the district conference your club meeting this week. Friday clubs are doing that today. So welcome Haiti, Mexico, Potosi, and Webster Groves. We appreciate you being there. We appreciate you taking time from wherever you are, your home, your office, Like I've told folks who have been here this week, I started a new job this week. So I'm in Peoria, Illinois, and I'm technologically challenged because I lost my background. So now you can see my lovely fake plant that's in the back. See? Things happen, man. But it's been a great week. We've learned a whole lot, but we've been able to do this because we've had some folks who have put in literally hours and hours of work that has been going on. So you see their names up on the screen. Thank you so much to Sue, Julie, Valerie, Tom, Dave, John, Patty, Jill, Chuck, Rebecca, Margie, and Jerry for all of the work that you guys have put together. We really appreciate you. This really could not have happened. All I did was sit here and just say stuff that Sue Cobb tells me to say. Of course, then again, I pretty much always do that whenever Sue Cobb's around and she tells me what to say. I say it. I've been married for 30 years. I'm well trained. So we appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for putting all that time in and making this district conference as great as it is. So I said we've had great speakers, and we have. Today is no exception. Our keynote speaker is Rotarian William Rogers. William Rogers, PhD, is a forensic economist. How you like that? I didn't even know was such a thing as forensic economist. He's Grissom of economy. I love that. He's got extensive experience in consulting, research, and academia. He has been a professor of economics at both Lindenwood University, my alma mater, and the University of Missouri, St. Louis. He is often called upon as an expert witness to calculate economic losses for litigation purposes, but we have no court trial today. His primary area of focus is urban economics, and he is particularly well qualified to talk to us about the practical applications of economic theory and community development issues in Missouri. Professor Rogers and his wife, past District Governor Jill, are both members of the Forest Park Rotary Club, and they reside, of all places, St. Charles. We got Jill to move out, so that's awesome. Thank you, Jill, for pulling William out to God's country, or as I call it, St. Charles County. If we have some time at the end of our remarks today, Professor Rogers has agreed to take some questions. So as you hear him talk, if you have any questions that you'd like for him to address, just put them in the chat box if you would. And when we finish up, if Professor Rogers has some time left, he will do those. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome Professor William Rogers.
Hello, my name is William Rogers, and I'm here to talk about the Missouri local economy and a little bit about how Rotary can interact with that. So to begin, this will be a summary of some of the work I've done with Professor Rick Hafer over at Lindenwood University on the Missouri economy. There's a couple papers I'm drawing on, as well as some of my knowledge of urban economic development and regional economic development. The papers I'm talking about are The Missing Million and Attracting People and Potential to Missouri. The first one was done at the Show Me Institute, and the second one was done for the Hammond Institute. I currently work at John Ward Economics, although this presentation is just my opinions and does not reflect any of the opinions of my employer or the other institutes. Now, when we think about economic development in Rotary, often we're presented images with projects on water projects, or of course polio, or shelter box, and all of those are great programs, but there's a lot to think about when we're talking about economic development locally. The number one thing economists are thinking about when they think about economic development, internationally, locally, is productivity. And productivity is such a big deal to economists because it opens up opportunities to do more of everything. So when we think about economic development as new buildings and shopping and busyness and where we live and what we interact with, that's economic development. Certainly productivity allows us to do more of those things, to produce more stuff, but economic development and greater productivity also provide us the ability to spend more time with leisure, spend more time outside of the workforce if we want. So productivity gives us more options of everything, and that's a really big deal to keep in mind and to have a focus on. Rick Hafer and I have done a lot of work on looking at the Missouri economy since 1969, since the moon landing. And the reason why that date gets picked is simply because a lot of local economic data begins in 1969. A lot of the standardized, well-published information begins there. There's certainly information that you can go back further, but it's not as standardized. It's difficult to compare with anything pre-1969 up till today. So that's what we'll start with. And the upshot is that Missouri has lagged behind the rest of the United States. Now I have the other 47 here. That's not a typo. For our projects, we really limited things to just the continental US, so Alaska and Hawaii, for a variety of reasons, were excluded from all our analysis. Now, the big headline is really the missing million here. So this graphic tells the entire story of Missouri's economic development. Now, I did say economic development is about productivity, and you'll notice in here we don't have a metric of productivity directly. We have earnings per job, which is going to be the closest thing to a productivity measure, jobs and population. And some of the interesting points about the jobs and population are places that are prosperous tend to attract more people, tend to attract more jobs. So Missouri, if we look at 1969 to 2019, the most current data I have, and we look at all the other 47 states and put their growth and standardize their growth to be equal to 1. So we'll just say however fast they grow, we're going to standardize that to this bar here. And that way we can compare Missouri to the growth of everything else. So we'll hold the rest of the United States, just kind of hold their growth constant and say, relative to the rest of the United States, what is Missouri doing? When it comes to earnings per job, this red line, you can see falling behind is the answer. And it's fairly steadily falling behind till you get about to the 2000 period where there's a flattening out that is it's keeping up with the rest of the United States. And even during the Great Recession, much of the Great Recession, it started to catch up with the United States, the rest of the United States. But since then, there's been a decline, a lagging behind. If we look at jobs, this blue line, it's pretty steadily downwards. There's a few blips here where Missouri catches up with the rest of the United States, but then falls back behind. And the green line is population, which also very steadily is falling behind. In fact, it's fallen behind so much that had Missouri kept up with the rest of the United States, there would be 1.2 million more people living in Missouri than currently reside here. So that's a really big deal. Missouri hasn't been keeping up with the rest of the United States, but even within Missouri, there are places that are growing faster than others. This graphic's a little tough. It is looking at the population growth, but what I call the population growth quotient. So what I've done here is looked at 1969 and looked at the population for all the counties in Missouri. So all of these different counties have their population in 1969. And I said, well, given their population, had they grown in proportion to their initial population, what would that look like? And which counties are growing faster than their initial population? And which ones are growing more slowly? So if you're growing as fast as one would predict given your initial population, that would be this white color. So all the counties that are sort of white here, they're basically have more people in them in proportion to how much they started with. So they're growing at as much as you might expect. The blue are growing faster and the red are growing more slowly, and in some cases are actually shrinking. Some of the counties up here in northern Missouri and in southeastern Missouri are actually shrinking. But within Missouri, you can see very clear concentrations of growth. So even though the Missouri as a whole is slower than the rest of the United States, even within Missouri, there are places that are lagging behind even further. So the northwestern part of the St. Louis metro area is growing faster than the rest of it. St. Louis County and St. Louis City not growing as fast as you might expect. And in fact, you might notice here following along Interstate 44 down to Branson and Springfield, and then moving back up to basically Columbia, this corridor is the main corridor of growth for the state of Missouri when it comes to population, but when it comes to a bunch of other metrics as well. This growth over here is a little bit of a misnomer because St. Louis, the metro area, is growing, but if I put Illinois over here, you'd see that what's going on is a lot of population is just simply moving west. It's not that the St. Louis area is growing rapidly. It's very weak, has very weak growth, but it is moving west. Over here in the Kansas City area, you have a similar story. Growth is moving west as well. If I put up Kansas, you'd see that the Kansas side of Kansas City is growing quite well. This down here is probably the Springfield, Branson area is the one area of Missouri that is definitely growing strong, and it's real growth. Arkansas down here is not shrinking, it's actually growing. If we do this again for earnings, now before I showed you earnings per job, this is just total earnings. You see a similar story. Basically a corridor here of growth, and the rest of the state, you're not seeing much growth going on. So whether it's earnings, if I did earnings per job, if it's population, if it's jobs, there's a bunch of different metrics I could put on here, and you're going to see something similar. There's this growth concentration along this corridor. Outside of that, a lot of Missouri is either stagnant or shrinking. Now, you hear a lot about bachelor's degrees, people with bachelor's degrees being associated with more growth. And while I think bachelor's degrees in formal education may be a little overstated and overpromoted, it's certainly the case that there is an association between growth and attracting people with bachelor's degrees or more advanced degrees. So this gives you a little indication of the domestic migration. How many people are moving in, how many people are moving out who have bachelor's degrees. Now this is a completely different data set, so I can't go back to 1969. This comes from the American Community Survey. The farthest back I can go is 2005. So this is much more contemporary, but it's also really detailed data. So people with a bachelor's degree, the red line is showing you all the people who 12 months earlier, from whatever date we're looking at, 12 months earlier, they lived somewhere else in some other state. And then they moved into the state of Missouri and they have a bachelor's degree. Now I'm limiting this population to people who are in what's called prime working age. So that is ages 25 to 54, that group right there. The blue line are all the people who 12 months earlier lived in Missouri and now live somewhere else in the United States. And what we can see here is during the boom, the boom prior to the Great Recession, more people were moving out. So Missouri had negative net migration when it comes to people with bachelor's degrees. During the recession, this is all muddled here. It's basically a wash. And then after, when we have the recovery, more people are moving out. Now, this doesn't mean that there's fewer people with bachelor's degrees in the state of Missouri, because the fact of the matter is most people don't move. But of the people who are moving, more are moving out of the state with bachelor's degrees than are moving into the state with bachelor's degrees. And that is a bit of a problem. The last bit I want to show to you is put Missouri in the context of the region. As you'll see here, there's a great divide in regional development in the United States, particularly with population and jobs and earnings, as we've gone over before. But I want you to be familiar with the regions here. So the regions that are growing rapidly are the far west, the southwest, the southeast, and the Rocky Mountains. The other regions in the United States are growing, but they're growing much more slowly. And it turns out Missouri actually doesn't do so bad when you compare it to the rest of the region. Here we have population growth. Now the first graphic I showed you had holding the rest of the United States constant and looked at Missouri's growth so that we could see, is Missouri growing faster or slower? It was growing slower. Here we're doing the opposite now. We're going to hold Missouri constant and compare these other regions to Missouri. And as you can see, there's a huge divide here. So Missouri, which is technically a part of the plains, although this excludes Missouri, the plains here excludes Missouri for this example, shows that Missouri is keeping up basically with its neighbors. So the plains, it's doing just about as well as the plains. It's doing a little bit better than New England as far as population growth. It's doing a little bit better than the Great Lakes. By the way, a side note, it's doing a lot better than Illinois. The state of Illinois is having a lot of problems, and it's doing better than the Mid-East. So it's doing better than a lot of its neighbors. Where it's lagging behind, and the reason why it's lagging behind so much, is really the Southeast, which has been growing steadily faster than Missouri, at least since 1969. You have the far west, which in this data set excludes Hawaii and Alaska. But the far west was growing much faster than Missouri. And then about in the 1990s, that growth is still faster than Missouri, but it has slowed down considerably. And then the final ones, which are the Rocky Mountains here and the Southwest, those areas have been growing like gangbusters, and there is no slowing down of those areas. So Missouri's doing well in its region, but not doing well compared to the fast-growing parts of the United States. How to remedy this, and is there anything to remedy? Should there be anything, should we remedy anything? I'll leave that to a side. But to give you an idea about what can be done, this is a tough one. There really are no silver bullets. And part of it is because there's some things that cannot be changed that seem to become more popular. And other issues are that, well, economic development turns out to be really complicated, especially for developed economies where there's not a lot of low-hanging fruit. So what can promote growth? Well, the single greatest predictor over the last 100 years of population growth in the United States is just January temperatures. It doesn't bode well for Missouri. There's not much you can do about that. So Florida grows rapidly, Texas grows rapidly, and that's in part because it's just warmer in January. Now, you also noticed in there, well, the Rocky Mountains are doing well, and they're pretty cold in January. I grew up in Colorado. It's pretty cold in January. My colleague Rick Hafer liked to point it out, well, Missouri could grow like gangbusters too if we could just get oceans and mountains. That is, those two features seem to be the prime features that are really attracting a lot of folks. So it may not be the case that Florida or Texas or Colorado have really great programs or really great policies for growth. They just happen to have some climate that people really like and can afford to move to. So what about some other things, other predictors like taxes or energy costs or regulation, deregulation, promoting big business like Barnes Jewish Hospital down here or other big businesses, promoting fashionable businesses. I'm saying this tongue in cheek because I have Cortex down here. The tech industry is an important industry, but it's also fashionable in that it's captured the attention and the imagination of lots of people. All of these, what's frustrating about economic development is that when there's a lot of local programs to try and promote development, they tend to work in one place, and then when they're put somewhere else, they don't work. Or they work at one particular time, and then later on they don't. Or in some cases, they just never work at all to provide what you're expecting. And that's been one of the frustrating things about economic growth and promoting local economic growth. And this is what we're getting at with the no silver bullets. Education, this is one thing, especially formal education, which gets promoted. But as I showed you before, people with higher education, they can move other places. And if they really want to go to Florida or Texas or Colorado, providing them an education makes it easier for them to go. And we're seeing people leave. So this is also a really challenging one. Educating more students also means you're going to be losing more of those students. And that's what gets us down here to this amenities issue. So Ed Glazer, an economist over at Harvard, wrote several pieces and books on urban areas and cities and put together this idea of the consumer city, that really cities that do really well are the ones that are able to attract people. They don't necessarily have to make them more productive with policies. They're just able to attract more talented people, more motivated people by providing them amenities that they really want. And so there was this idea of promoting amenities in urban areas. And there's some truth to that. On the other hand, some of those amenities are kind of fashionable amenities or social amenities that require only a handful of places that can provide that. San Francisco is undoubtedly popular. Manhattan is undoubtedly popular. And Austin and a variety of other cities are popular, but those can't be replicated because there's something about their popularness that makes them popular, right? Okay, the final one here is culture, and culture is getting a great deal of attention by economists. And this might be the next big item that allows us to really understand how to promote economic growth. So my last point here is big push. That is a big investment into Cortex or tech industry, a big push into other big businesses or changes in deregulation or regulation, whatever those are, some big policy changes, if they're done in some areas, we see them work, and sometimes we don't see them work. Well, there's this notion that they have to have the right culture there to really take off. That is, doing these things in a culture that is not prepared for growth doesn't get you very far. But if you do this in areas where growth has a lot of cultural support, then you're able to generate a lot more local growth. So there was a time when the French were in love with the United States, and this is Alex de Tocqueville. He wrote a famous book in the 19th century called Democracy in America, and he came to the United States and was stunned by it. This place was a place where people solved problems by banding together into organizations, sometimes temporary organizations, sometimes permanent. Sometimes the problems were big, sometimes they were small, but there was just this attitude, a culture where people would organize and disband and organize depending on the problems they face. And he contrasted that with the French, where we just didn't have that. You were expecting someone else to deal with problems, whether it was the local government or their federal government, or you just learned to put up with problems. There wasn't this idea that locals and neighbors could band together to solve problems, permanent or temporary. And that spirit, that America's spontaneous organizational spirit, was a lot of its strength in the 19th century. But as a lot of people have, a lot of researchers have identified, if you're familiar with Robert Putnam's work, Bowling Alone, that certainly began to wane. In the 1970s, there's a lot of evidence of this, but Rotary-like organizations are on the decline, certainly in influence, if not in numbers, at this point. And some of this gets at a culture, starting to lose a culture of that organizational spirit, a sort of, it's a type of entrepreneurial spirit where it's not necessarily entrepreneurial in that you're putting together a business, but that you're organizing people. So that entrepreneurial spirit is certainly weakening. Now, it's not the case that entrepreneurial spirit or that spontaneous organizational spirit is dead. We see it in very concentrated and very intense in, for example, the tech industry. It's not the only place we see this, but it is intensely located there. And that harkens back to that 19th century spirit. And the spirit isn't so much about solving a problem and then it's done and then we can disband. The spirit is about we expect to deal with problems by organizing. And so the entire tech industry is one where talent and money is thrown at problems, but there's a cultural attitude that just expects that this is the way we deal with problems. And that's a little bit of something that needs to be, I think, brought back to the fore, brought back to the mindset of people of just, this is how we do things, and there's not much question of it. That's the cultural attitude I'm getting at. So my small scale proposal or my modest proposal is that this is really the objective that Rotary clubs can take on. We're all a part of the local economy, so everything we do by definition is part of economic development. But having this notion that we're also trying to develop a culture of dealing with problems through organization, or as I like to say, investing in people. One thing in the United States we tend to do is really segregate people. Unfortunately, racial segregation and some segregation forms are on the decline, but there's other types of segregation that are on the increase, particularly intergenerational segregation, where we keep younger kids away from middle-aged people, away from older people. And that's something that can be very dangerous because we're not able to really pass along knowledge or direct investments into younger folks and younger generations. So investing in people, as Rotary has the Rotaract, the Interact, the RILA, promoting more of those type of activities and promoting this notion of a entrepreneurial spirit that goes beyond just building businesses. And doing it not because we are trying to achieve an objective of 10% more growth or whatever it is, but just because we enjoy doing this. So the game isn't a finite game that we will do all this work and then we'll win, but more of an attitude of this is just simply how we live. Anyway, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, William. We appreciate that. I appreciate people who are much smarter than me, like you, to break that down. But I appreciate those words. I know we've had a couple of questions. I don't know which one you want to take first, but I'll throw it back to you and just give you the opportunity to elaborate on a couple of those questions that popped up.
All right, the last question I've received is about organizational spirit, and that's really the big one to think about. So I got a couple questions about St. Louis City. Keep in mind, when part of what I was getting at with the Missouri issue is that we're talking about a 60-year problem, and there's not going to be any easy solutions to that. And so trying to iron out how do we solve, the decline of St. Louis City, that's actually not the way that Rotary is going to be helpful. The Rotary can be a lot more helpful if it focuses on the cultural element, on what kind of attitudes are just going to be expected. And you do that by interacting with other people, not only having the attitude, but interacting with other folks and passing that interaction to younger folks. So the Rotaract, the RILA, the Interact, those kind of connections with the middle-aged and the older folks, I think that's really where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. So that's the organizational spirit, passing that along to younger folks. The more you study about the United States in the, basically the 19th century, mid to the late 19th century, the more you find out that the United States is a very different place back then compared to today. And it's one that was a lot more innovative, a lot more entrepreneurial, not necessarily with businesses, but entrepreneurial in a much broader sense. As I mentioned before, when problems pop up, whether it's just barn raising or whether it's dealing with water problems in the country, dealing with big issues, dealing with small issues, folks organized. And that was the environment that Rotary was born out of. But the United States has lost a lot of that spirit as we keep outsourcing our problems to local governments, to federal governments. We outsource education to schools, and there's so much outsourcing that goes on, and some of it's very useful, but it can be overdone. And I think we can bring a little bit more of that action back into local organization, which Rotary is a part of. One last thing I'll point out, given the comments here, something concrete. I spent 17 years in academia, and I can tell you something that kids are hungry for, trying to figure out what to do with their lives. And I can promise you this: college is the worst place in the world to find out what you want to do for the rest of your life, unless you want to be a professor. Then it's great. I mean, I love college. It was a great place for me. But for everybody else, it's horrible. Not that college is horrible, but it's a bad place to find where you want to be. And I would really suggest that Rotary clubs start thinking about shadowing programs. You guys are all of us are a part of, even if we're not employed, we're all a part of the economy. Offering for high school kids, not internships. Internships are too structured and too bureaucratized. Just shadow. Bring people in. Here's what life is like. Here's what work is like. You run your own business. You show them here's the stuff you do. You work in a big corporation. Here's what you do. That's really what the kids are desperate for. They're really desperate for that kind of knowledge. So many times at these alumni parties, when I meet up with former students who did great in school, they come back to me depressed because they're in a job that they don't like. They did all this work, all this training to get into a job that they realize this is not for me. And I went through all this schooling to get there. So helping kids out ahead of time, just inexpensive shadowing, something like that would be great.
That's a great thought. Are you familiar with the CAPS program?
Only a little bit. Yeah.
So I know there's a CAPS program
yeah.
both in St. Louis County and St. Charles County, and it takes juniors and seniors in high school and allows them to do something like that. That's a great advice, and I love that. You don't want to spend $100,000 over 4 years to realize, wow, this job stinks. I'm so glad that I did that. So I get to start all over again. Hey, we did have a question that popped up about that's the side hustle culture. Do you think that's leading to an entrepreneurial spirit? It seems like all of us have a side hustle going on these days.
Well, there's 360 million people in the United States, plus people who aren't even residents here. So you're going to have lots and lots of entrepreneurs. They're all over the place. And yes, to some degree, we're starting to turn into a little bit more like that old U.S., that 19th century United States. Another thing that, again, going back to the history, Charlie Chaplin, if you watch any of his movies are about a rebellion from manufacturing, about those good old manufacturing jobs where you go 9 to 5, you're told what to do, and you crank a wrench all day long and you get paid well. But at the time, that was considered offensive by so many Americans, because the thought of me being told when to work and where to work and how to work, who are you to tell me that? That was the attitude. So there was a big, a lot of turmoil to get folks into that. And it's sort of like the U.S. culture is starting to wake up from that malaise of actually manufacturing, that's great and all, but being able to have side hustles, to be more independent, to work with others, have things that are not so bureaucratized, or have a life that's not so bureaucratized, actually wakens you up a little bit. And so, side hustle culture, I think it can very well be beneficial.
Well, William, thank you very much. The virtual applause from everyone
Yes,
all around today. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate you taking the time. And you can turn around and wave at past District Governor Jill.
Thank you, Jill.
Hi, thank you so much. I love this. I'm sure they're never going to ask me to MC this stuff ever again. But we have been really lucky all this week long. We've been blessed because we've had people who put the time and effort to ask the questions. But we've had some great guest speakers this week, going back to starting the week with Chris Wells. And once Dave is able to get everything loaded up, if you missed Monday, man, you missed a really interesting guy, especially talking about the younger end of what William was just talking about, and that Rotary type mindset. Boy, those guys have that entrepreneurial spirit that he was talking about. So today's showcase of Club Projects video is going to show some of the community development and environmental projects that our clubs have been involved with. So Dave, I'll let you roll that one.
All this week, we've been sharing the work of many of our District 6060 clubs in the 7 Rotary areas of focus. If you missed any of the spotlight sections, all of this week's district conference sessions have been recorded. On Monday, we gave an overview of the 7 areas of focus. Tuesday placed the spotlight on health-related projects throughout District 6060. Wednesday's emphasis was on education and literacy. And Thursday's emphasis was on water and sanitation and conflict resolution. Today we'll be spotlighting club service projects in the areas of community development and environment, as our clubs look for ways to make their communities better places to live, work, and play. Many of our clubs focus on improving their local parks and recreation facilities. On a crisp fall day, Webster Groves Rotarians turned out in full force to plant trees in Blackburn Park. West St. Louis County Rotary worked together to beautify Bluebird Park in their community. Vandalia Rotary Club members made improvements to their Little League ballpark by installing new aluminum benches, a new backstop, and repairing the storage shed. This Little League park is now ready for this spring's baseball season. High Ridge Rotarians installed Rotary benches at the pickleball court at the High Ridge Community Center. Festus Rotary installed a bike repair station on their city's biking path. A number of our District 6060 clubs have completed projects to make their communities more attractive to both residents and visitors. Here are 3 examples. Reynolds County Rotary installed colorful banners on the light pole in Ellington to highlight their high school baseball team's state championship and promote Rotary. Bowling Green Rotarians partnered with their city to install large planters of flowers and banners for light poles along Main Street in downtown Bowling Green. St. Genevieve Rotarians installed a beautiful brick welcome sign that you'll see as you enter this historic town on Highway 61. Many of our district's 60/60 clubs focus their community development efforts on the less fortunate in their community. Crestwood Rotarians donated cleaning supplies and household items to families in need. West St. Louis County Rotary recently added fencing and a bench at Caring Solutions, an agency that provides housing for adults living with disabilities. Perryville Rotarians picked up the shovels and rakes to add more convenient parking spaces for their community members receiving services at an equestrian rehabilitation facility. Finally, for the past 3 years, Cape Girardeau West Rotarians have partnered with Slumberland of Cape Girardeau to donate dozens of beds for children. Nearly 80 Rotarians and volunteers turned out on a Saturday in November to deliver these new beds to needy children in their community. As we've seen throughout the week, District 60/60 Rotarians are indeed people of action who are focused on making an impact in each of the Rotary areas of focus. Nearly all of the projects that we've showcased this week have been funded by CAP grants. Your generous donations to our Rotary Foundation provide the ability to offer these grants to clubs for service projects in their communities. Now is a great time to support the work of our clubs, our District 60/60 People of Action, by giving to our Rotary Foundation.
Thank you, Don, for narrating that. It's been great to learn about all the different things that have been going on all week long around the district. Everybody's been busy, pandemic notwithstanding. It seems that we've had a lot of clubs who've really found opportunities, really creative opportunities, to be able to get out there and do some very unique things. As we wrap this up, Margie has been pointing this out all week long, that we are accepting applications for district governor nominee designee and assistant governor. So if you would like to throw somebody's name out there, or if you would like to throw your name out there, even better, you can contact Margie. Her contact information is in the chat area. So you can just scroll up there, you will see that. And I know we also have $1,000 project budgets. I know I'm going to say this poorly, but we have $1,000 per project that is not matching, correct, Margie? You don't have to match. We have $1,000 for projects that you can submit for. So your assistant governor or your club president probably has the information off that. If you do not, you can reach out to Margie, you can reach out to Sue Cobb, and they will fill you in with all of that information. He's looking for a nod from Margie that says, yes, that's correct, Mike. And she smiles and we're good. Yay. All right. So we're in there. All right. So as we wrap this up, a few parting thoughts for the day. First of all, thank you to all of our past district governors for attending this week. Especially thank you to Rick Tanucci for turning your camera on today. I've seen you all week long. I have missed your smiling face. It is always good to see you. So thank you for being here. I'm trying to get Stacy Self to do the same because I can't tell if she's short hair Stacy or long hair Stacy because it's been a pandemic. Who knows? Her hair could be down to her knees now. Anything's possible. Our best hat of the day award goes to Seth Langton. Seth, that is an awesome hat. You wear it well. Granted, you did not have a whole heck of a lot of competition for best hat of the day today. And it's an award that I just came up with. So there wasn't a lot of pre-notice going into it. Happy birthday to Brenda Louder for St. Charles Noonday Club. Her birthday is always a day before mine, so I always remember that. Ladies and gentlemen, once we get back to meeting in person, if you have never made up at the St. Charles Noonday Club, you should do that just to hear their happy birthday singing. You will be scarred for life after you hear it. However, it's an experience that everybody needs to have at least once in their life. It's a lot of fun. Hopefully you have learned a lot this week and you have felt that this district conference has been a good use of your time. It's a really creative way to do a district conference in a pandemic. I go back to all those names that we saw earlier today. Thanks to all of you for putting that time in. I would tell you my takeaway from this week is when you have 1,800 Rotarians serving at our 52 Rotary clubs throughout District 6060 and are committed to the 7 Rotary areas of focus, we have shown that we can definitely change the world. We impact those who live just around the corner from us in our own communities, and we impact people that we will never meet on the other side of the globe. And that's really what makes being a Rotarian so rewarding. I'm very proud to be a Rotarian of District 6060, and I hope you are too. Remember, if you missed anything from the previous week's sessions, this has all been recorded. We will get this out to you at some point. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could ring the bell, I would. If you have 50-50 to hand out, good luck. I hope you win. This concludes our district conference. Everybody have a great weekend. We will see you soon. Bye-bye. Yay!